Ladies and gents, it's time for part 3 of the Day 9 Daily. How the hell have I not used that in 415 episodes? Holy shit, that rhyme is awesome. Oh my god, I love that. Wow. Awesome. Let's talk more about Mutalisks. We've been seeing all these great positioning things happening by hero, and I want to just note that the core basic idea is pretty straightforward. You are being aggressive in the middle of the map, trying to gobble up vision as your greatest tool. And wherever you see the Mutalisks, you can start splitting your army up, sending a little bit of stuff here, sending a little bit of stuff there. If you don't see where his Mutalisks are, send a little bit of stuff here, and then the Mutalisks will arrive to kill it all. Move over somewhere else and expand a lot. It's a pretty simple idea. Gobbling up vision, seeing where the Mutalisks are, and kind of splitting your forces appropriately. But what we're also seeing is that there's a lot of complexity and a lot of really big trust you have to put in that decision making in the middle. So as you're going to try this out, what I want you to do a lot is rewatch your replays, and try to think if you were moving out in the middle of the map and if you could see where his Mutalisks were at any point in time, how would you resplit up those units? Because I think one thing that's very hard to train yourself to do is to judge tactical decisions after the fact. It's very easy to say something like, I didn't get Immortals this game, I'll get Immortals next game. Like a building related question. But in terms of like losing micro in a battle, or losing in a battle because of micro, it's hard to sort of reload and maybe I should have moved this that way and this that way and all this other stuff. But I want you to do it a lot against Mutalisks, because you'll start to see the Mutalisks are not actually very scary. They're some of the flimsiest units around, especially when you have Stormers. So at this point we're talking about, yeah, look at it. He's not a perfect player. He's totally super not perfect at all. He's losing all sorts of jazz. It looks like there's a nice split up, hitting in two places at once. This can be a little bit annoying, but remember, all we gotta do is have just a few Stalkers and some Stormers, and we're in good shape. Now, as good and as glorious as this sort of two-pronged attack may seem, it's actually just now going to kill off about twice as many workers as has been killed off all game long. We still killed off this expansion. We've killed off all the expansions, as a matter of fact. And you know what? Dimaga is down to 4 bases, 2 of which are mined out. And we have established control of a southern base. No matter how much damage this thing did, we're just keeping him low on his bases. So cool, we saw all the Mutalisks sweep up north. The Mutalisks are in this top right side. Awesome. I want to start transferring probes, building cannons, and I want to control this. I want to control that to try to shut that down. I probably want to get these guys the hell out of there. No big deal. A little bit of an error. But look at Hero riding out to meet him. Oh yeah. Lord of the Rings. Ride out to meet him. And of course, Dimaga ship. Lot of Arconage. Lot of this sort of... Yeah, look at this. We gobble this up. Now, where are the units going to go? Well, we're scouting these expansions with DTs, and oh, look, there are the Mutalisks. Nice. So we're just going to kind of slowly sweep our way back down and start patrolling up this side. So let's ask some expandy question. Where's a good place to expand? Boom! Up there on the top right side. Very good. Because we just saw a huge Mutapack to the left. Excellent. Excellent. Alright. Cool. Taking them out. Top right, totally great place to expand. Another great place to expand right here. Really good. We have a whole army here. And you're saying, well, gee, those are 2 opposing sides. Why would both be good? Well, it's all just depending on where the Mutalisks positioning is. Now suddenly the top is feeling a little bit more risky to expand to. Well, that's fine, because look at Hero. Oh, 1 Stalker blink ahead. Talked about that at the start of part 2, the 1 Stalker blink ahead. Maybe it was even in part 1, I don't remember. You'll also notice that as time goes on, gas has been an increasingly important substance. We're starting to get more Archons. Not that many Templar. I think everyone has seen Storm crush, but it's easy to overdo, to have like 10 Templar here. You only need a few if he's really getting a lot of Mutalisks. If you can just have enough for like 4 Storms, you're going to be in great shape against Mutas. Now we can start getting a little bit more aggressive. Now at this point in time, we see that Dimaga has successfully teched up all the way to a really intimidating Broodlord Infestor force. And suddenly we find ourselves in a completely, uniquely different situation. No longer am I up against the hyper, ridiculously, stupidly mobile force of Mutalisks, but I'm up against the beastly, immobile, and totally unassailable Broodlord Infestor force. This is so tough to break. This is like one big, giant-ass tank when all you have is a plastic shiv. It's not a good spot to be in. However, what we're going to see Hero do is just treat it the same general concept as before about this whole expanding thing. You know, obviously, if there's a huge Broodlord Infestor force here, we want to expand up like here and like here. We don't want to expand somewhere down here. We would want to shove our army in between. Also, Hero finally starts to pick up with doing some of these counter drops. Notice this composition, 2 Archons, because my opponent probably only has a couple of Mutalisks out that would be able to come back and defend this in time. Sure, you can warp in Zealots. Those are always good things to warp in, just because you don't really need the minerals so much. But this is only really happening because we saw the Broodlord pop in. I'm not really the biggest fan of doing a lot of this too hastily against a Mutalisk player. I think eventually this is actually one of the ideal things to do against a Mutalisking player. And of course, let's talk a little bit about why. Again, pretend for a moment that there's no Broodlord Infestor at all. Pretend that at the state of the map right now, that Hero is up against a huge Mutalisking player, and he's looking for an opportunity to pierce in. If he just has a Warp Prism with 4 Zealots in it, not necessarily an empty Warp Prism, but if he just has a Warp Prism and just marches up here, drops 4 Zealots, and then comes here and warps in 4 Zealots, sends these Zealots here, sends these 4 Zealots here, and then runs away with the Warp Prism. What would that do to a Mutalisking player? Well, he'd have to send Mutalisks up here, he'd have to send Mutalisks over here. Hell, if he was going Mutaling and had a lot of Ling, then sweet. He can warp in a ton of Zealots here, and that will demolish the Zerglings, forcing the Mutalisks to come back. Are you seeing why that +3 upgrade is so important now? It's so great. So awesome. Greatest way ever to do some repositioning woes.
I cannot maintain.
Tragically, at this point in time, the game devolves away from Mutalisks, which kind of bums me out, kind of stinks, makes me a little bit frowny. But what I love about Dimaga in this circumstance is he says, well, hell, I have to get an expansion up. I have this huge, slow army controlling this back expansion. What's the best way to expand? Well, it's to slowly inch my creep forward and bring all my spine crawlers up and start trying to just force bases to happen over here. Is this not the most epic way to expand that you have ever seen? I love it. And still, Hero favors more of the High Templar Archons rather than the Dark Templar Archons because you can spend all those minerals on photon cannons and expanding. And of course, with this huge army starting to make its way down to the expansion that we're taking, look at Hero's positioning. He's hopping into the middle of the map, and now he's starting to gear up to expand to the top right. Oh, yeah. We're kind of shooting for an Archon toilet, or just some sort of Archon-based strategy. Most of the positioning stuff was in Part 2, which was really cool, but per usual, my favorite creed ever is the expand. In the late game, it's all about how you expand related to the positioning of your army and the positioning of his army. And we're seeing that still remain true as he transitions into Broodlords. This is why I don't like splitting away my High Templar, because they're my friends. This is kind of a cool game in the positioning regard, because it's so much so about It's so different. In the mid game, it was all muta, 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 mobile, 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 mobile. And now all of a sudden, it's the exact opposite, hyper immobile. And look at the drops, doing massive, massive damage, killing off a ton of stuff. But now that we have control, look at the mini-map. We have vision of pretty much the entire right side of the map, so we're going to expand there. Far away from the throes of broodlords. And of course, we're going to do a lot of these warp prism drops. Yeah. Aw, yeah. This game has a pretty sweet finish. Yeah, so you see Dimaga doing this sort of a little pushing, pressuring action. Hero is going to sweep down a little bit to try to just get in the way of that. A lot of dropping. I'm kind of breezing through the end because I kind of want to do questions because I kind of am casting AHGL in like 2 minutes. But we can do non-stop catching him off guard, out of position. Oh yeah, look at that. See that huge drop up there? We had to deal with it with all our Mutalisks. And what does that mean? It means we earned ourselves an expansion. Oh, and we're about to earn ourselves another one. You know, Colossi are coming up at the very end of the game. These are kind of the broodling killers. But I think that it's fine if you have like a really heavy Archon force. I don't really think that you desperately need the Colossus. I mean, it definitely helps. Colossi are super good against broodlings, but I mean, Hero's been doing just fine without it. Oh yeah, look, another counter warp prism drop happening up here. Being kind of annoying with everything. The Greater Spire's actually dead. He has to be rebuilt. Hey look, there's all those Mutalisks again. So sweet, we can now take another expansion up here knowing it's safe. We're positioning everything over here because we just saw Mutalisks in this general region. Oops. Looks like they're headed up to the top side. Is something up there? Yeah, it's a warp prism. Warp prism, spending 200 minerals at a time to get 2-3 extra bases. Easy trade. Of course, Dimaga is Spine Crawler. Broodlord pushing. Oh! Slowing it down. Units lost tab. Alright, let's go to this tab. Alright, alright. Nah. Let's just leave it with the units lost. Alright, 28,500. And pause. And pause. And... Oh, this is totally not commentary. I don't care. This is awesome. And oh no, 28,650 and bunch of dead broodlords. 36,000. All right. I gotta see it again. All right. 168 food. 168. 114. Oh no. Toilette powder. Now that, gentlemen, is an effective toilet. Alright, here it goes. This is not commentary, but this is awesome. Oh! Yep, and that's how he won the game. But I do want to note, it's very easy to look at that and be like, oh, well, clearly he won because of the Archon toilet. Well, it's like half true. Dimaga is barely able to get up these bottom expansions. He's just barely managed to do that. And Hero has comfortably gobbled up all these upper bases. It was only really a matter of time with the way Hero's pounding away at this and with the number of Colossi and Warp Prisms coming up. Dimaga's really being pulled every which way. Hero's just making certain to take tons and tons and tons and tons of expansions. And an Archon toilet is sort of a finishing blow, but it's not the critical blow. Ah. Let us take questions. Let us take questions. Questions from the question grabber. And then I'm going to be doing the After Hours League. After Hours Gaming League Week 4 match between Facebook and the Geek Squad. Clear all these. F5, taking questions. So Doom SZ says, day 9, what if he kills off the force protecting your base while you are pressuring his expansions? I mean, the obvious answer is that you'll probably lose, but yeah, actually, you know what? That is the way you kind of have to think about it. Is, yeah, of course you'll lose, but the important thing is that if his army is going to your main base, and I'm just going to say is here. Here's your main base. Oh my god, his army's there, so we're sending it this way. And if we just sent a few guys back, just like 5 zealots or like 6 stalkers, these guys are going to do huge, gigantic, epic damage. The mistake that people make is bringing all their units back here to try to kill off this expansion. You don't need to bring back that many because you know his whole army is here and that his whole army cannot physically possibly get all the way back to this expansion because of the way the map positioning works. So in a sense, when you say, what if he kills off the force protecting your base while you're pressuring? The answer is that you're splitting your force too far towards the pressure. You don't really need that many. Again, if you send 4 stalkers to kill a completely unprotected base, they'll be just as effective as 30 stalkers killing off that unprotected base. So that's really the underlying thing going on. And I want you to get out of the habit of saying, oh, well, what if he kills off this force? What if he kills off this force? He shouldn't be able to kill off the force. You should have just a few stalkers, but then Templar should be nearby to storm. And that'll really mess him up hard. To the point where if he wants to stay and fight, he's either going to have a lot of dead mutas or a lot of red life mutas. Yeah. Yeah. So White Glint SC says, you said Phoenixes aren't good against mutas as numbers grow. Is this just because it's off one Stargate? And what's your opinion on Oxalov's Zealot Phoenix play versus Mutalisks? I've only heard rumors about Oxalov's play, so I'll come back to that in a second. But yeah, a lot of it is just because you can't quite get Phoenixes up as quickly. The bigger one is that as you progress forward in the game, it's the number of Phoenixes you need would be huge, and it's so easy to just shut them down by like building one Infestor and just getting it. Even in direct engagements, the Phoenixes can't really deny expanding very quickly, so the Zerg player is going to rapidly scale a little bit larger. What you're hearing me say is a lot of things that don't exactly relate to Mutalisks and Phoenixes shooting at each other. Because StarCraft 2 is not about units shooting at each other. It's about all the interactions of all the other stuff. So when I hear someone say, I'm going to respond by getting a lot of Phoenixes, I'm immediately like, how are you putting a lot of pressure on expansions? How are you dealing with expanding of your own? I've heard Oxalov just goes absolute balls to the wall Phoenix and just builds some extra zealots on the side. I think that can work. I've seen it work only a couple of times. I've only actually ever seen it a few times. Weirdly enough, on Jungle Story, if any of you remember that map. Or Jungle Basin, sorry. Jungle Story is a StarCraft 1 map. I think it will feel not just better, but also a little more flexible if you don't go for the big Phoenix thing. Because if a guy tells you, I'm only going to make Mutalisk, and you say, cool, I'm only going to make Phoenixes, the Phoenixes may end up winning. The one thing is that most concerns me, aside from all the stuff I've said, is like he could go 12 Mutalisk and then all Roaches. He could go 20 Mutalisks and then all Roaches. He could go 20 Mutalisks and then start going like hell Ling Infestor. There's a ton of easy to do transitions as Zerg. Because with Zerg, it's not actually hard to transition. If you wanted to start getting Colossi, you'd have to build a lot of robotics facilities in late game to get like 6 Colossi up. But if you want to transition into Roaches, you build a Roach Warren, and now you have 60 larvae sitting around, so you just suddenly have 60 Roaches. You don't have to get 60 Roaches, they're just, bam, there, right in front of you. So, yeah, I'm much bigger fan of the positioning of Stalker Muter. J Bebe says, Dana, what is the best general position to put your cannons against a Mutalisking player? I think Hero has some great positioning. Let me actually pull back to 21 minutes into the game. Oops, looks like he just lost those cannons. Let me back up to 18. There should be a cannon right here. Where did that cannon go? Doop, 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 doop. Bam. I like this sort of cannon positioning a lot, where you'll notice that on the inside is all the probes and the vital stuff, and on the outside is the cannons. They almost create this, like, umbrella that he can't pass through. It's really tempting to do something like put a cannon here and a cannon here, so that way it's sort of like this is a box of defended probes, and this is a box of defended probes. But I'm much more a fan of putting cannons back here. Much more fan of, like, this, even though it doesn't even look like it's on this side of the probe. Mutalisks are generally going to be coming from the top side. Even as I sort of scroll forward, it's like it creates these invisible walls. And I like to be able to sort of push the Mutalisk back. If there's a cannon here, it's probably going to take some damage. But what I really want is to be able to buy a little bit of time to sneak the probes away and to have, like, a Templar on the other side. Yeah, I just kind of like the outer cannons. And I think even more important than the positioning is just the willingness to build a lot of them. Taking one more. Taking one more. Alright, I'm going to take this last question, and I'm going to answer a different question. Watch this. So, SC2 Zarent says, Dave, do you find that there is any way to deal with mutas if Zerg delays your storm tech? My answer to that would be to say something like, how did he end up delaying your storm tech? And then just to not let that happen anymore. I think too often it's very easy to fall into the trap of saying something like, well, what happens if I'm in position X and spending so much energy thinking about that answer that, or you'll spend tons of time thinking about the answer to this question when you shouldn't have even been in that position in the first place. It shouldn't be something like, how do I come back after I lose my natural expansion? It's like, well, just make sure you always defend your natural expansion properly. You probably need a different build is the next thing, or is the appropriate thing. Always be thinking about, how do I fix the next game, as opposed to, what do I do now that I'm in this game? And I think that this ends up being a big difference between people who will play 5 to 10 games a week versus, like, a real competitive pro who will do, like, 50 games per day or something like that. But even if you are playing the casual 5 to 10 games a week, be thinking about the next game all the time and all these sorts of things. If the Mutalisks are killing off your Storm Tech, maybe the answer is to build your Templar Archives in a safer spot. Maybe you are getting it too early and you don't have enough Stalkers to defend. Maybe you're getting it way too late when you've already lost the game. Templar Archives should be pretty straightforward to defend. I mean, in this game, we even saw that as I come back to the 9-minute mark. Oops, 12-minute mark, because before the 10-minute mark, you can't really have Mutalisks up. Yeah, I mean, we saw these gateways popping up, and wow, look, yeah, we started Templar Archives pretty early on, and it's pretty nicely, cleanly tucked away in there. So, yeah. And we're even running around with our Phoenixes. You can run around with Zealots, do all sorts of that jazz. Give ourselves a little bit more time. I really need to do the After Hours Gaming League, so whatever you do, don't go anywhere. The HGL is coming up right after this. It's going to be Facebook versus Geek Squad. Yeah.